It's TK Friday, and today TK8 goes to Pittsburgh. We're going to pull out the TK8 plugin for Photoshop and work on some architectural photography. Stay tuned. Hello and welcome to the Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly. Well, it is TK Friday, and today the TK8 plugin for Photoshop goes to Pittsburgh. Today we're going to work on some architectural photography. By the way, if you want to follow along with me today, I'm going to leave a Dropbox link for you in the description below this video where you can download a PSD file. Now that PSD file will look like this. It's going to have my Lightroom edited layer on it. It's going to have a Topaz Denoise AI layer on it, and it's going to have a cleanup layer on it because I got rid of a flag in this image and this little piece at the top of the building. I got rid of that. And that's just a spot healing thing. It's easy to do. And I just wanted to save you a little time so you could jump right into the edit. But we're going to start out right here in Lightroom. Now, this is the finished product in Lightroom right now. But let me show you how I got here. But first, if you don't yet have the TK8 plugin for Photoshop, I'll leave a link in the description below the video where you can purchase it along with a bunch of training videos. And the TK8 plugin for Photoshop is only $29. It's very affordable. And I recommend that you get the combo deal where you get the TK8 plugin for Photoshop along with the TK8 video guide. It'll get you up and running. That along with watching my channel will really help you out. And there's a bunch of really great videos here by Sean Bagshaw that you can purchase. If you use my promo code DK15, you'll save 15% off your entire purchase, including videos. So that's a really good savings. I make a small commission when you do that, and that helps to support my channel and keep these TK Fridays coming your way. So I want to thank all of you in advance when you purchase products off Tony Kuiper's web store. Thank you. By the way, for a bit of a backstory, this photo was taken on my iPhone 13 Pro Max. And I'll tell you what, iPhones, I don't care if it's a Pro Max or any iPhone or any smartphone for that matter, they are really great for taking architectural photography, okay? And I took my iPhone down to Pittsburgh last weekend and got a bunch of really cool shots, and this is one of them that we will be editing today. And Tony makes linear profiles for your iPhones as well, so you can get those too. And I have a link for linear profiles in the description below as well, where you can get a free linear profile. Let me show you how this image started out. This is what it looks like when it's imported into Lightroom. I like the way it looks here, but I ended up straightening it up a little bit, which I'll show you here in a little bit here, but I end up looking like this in the end. Now, I basically used the linear profile for my iPhone that I got from Tony Kuiper, and then I hit auto, and then I just touched up my white and black point, and then I went right into tone curve and adjusted my tone curve, you know, my highlights, lights, darks, and shadows, till I got it looking the way I liked it. And then as far as detail was concerned, I just used a basic amount of sharpening, like 40%, and no noise reduction because I'm going to denoise it with Topaz Denoise AI. And like I said, I'm providing that PSD file for you, and it's already going to be denoised. And then also, as far as lens corrections, I remove chromatic aberrations always and enable profile corrections. And then under transform here, I use this guided transform tool, and I went ahead and reset it so I can show you how it works. Now inside transform, we have a bunch of different options here, but I only want to look at guided today. I don't want to confuse you. We'll get into some of these others at another time, but I'm going to click on guided. Okay. And now when I do, you see I have that square. It's a magnifying loop. Okay. And you can see that crosshatch. Okay. So what I want to do, I want to find a line that I want to make straight. Okay. Or vertical, I should say. So I'm going to use this building here and this building. So I'll start with this building. So we'll come up on the edge, and that loop lets you see that you're right on the edge. Left click with your mouse and hold that down and drag down and find another line near the bottom, or the edge, I should say, right there. And now release your left mouse click, okay? And now come over to this building, and we want to find the edge here, right here. I'm going to click, left click with my mouse and drag down to right around here. Make sure I'm right on the edge of the building. I'm still holding the left click down. When I release it, watch what happens. it straightens right up. Now you can see here on the edges, it's you see this white canvas here. Now you can click on Constrain Crop, and Lightroom will then crop away those white areas. And then at that point, you can close out of the Transform tool, and then you can come up here to the Crop tool, and then you can readjust your crop. Okay, so if I go with the original crop, right now I'm going to click this on to lock the original crop in. And so what I can do is I can just pull this in and maintain that original aspect ratio of the crop. And I think I had a crop somewhere right around here, give or take, and then I just click done. And then to get it into Photoshop, just right click on the image, go to edit in Photoshop 2022. And as I said, I'm already there. So let me go over into Photoshop. And as I said, with the PSD you download, you're going to have that initial Lightroom adjustment layer along with a Topaz Denoise AI layer with a mask on it. This mask is a Dark Zero. Now, there is no Dark Zero mask in the TK8 plugin, and I mentioned this last week. But to get it, all you need to do is go to a Lights 2 and click on the invert button, and that gives you that Dark Zero mask, okay? And I like to use it because it's really good for denoising. It mainly hits the really dark shadowy areas, but it's a little bit lighter denoising on the very light areas, which gives you a very natural denoising, and I highly recommend it. Okay, and if you don't want to use any mask on here, you would have no noise at all in the image. So you can just remove the mask if you don't like it, but it's up to you. But I like to do it this way, okay? And then I have a cleanup layer. It's just a blank pixel layer. And if I shut it off, you'll see it just removes the flag and this little piece of the building right here. I didn't think that was very helpful, so I went ahead and did that cleanup. And I recommend that you do a lot of that cleanup at the beginning. And also on this building, there's a few from the windows here. See the little reflections in here? They kind of bugged me, so I got rid of those too. And I just used the spot healing tool to get rid of all that stuff. And the spot healing tool, I just had it in the sample all layers. That's important. And I always use a blank layer for that. So that's how I achieve that. My cleanup. So here's the before cleanup, and here is the after. In case you're wondering why I have all this space right here, this image is in a portrait mode, so it's up and down. And I'll just show you. This is how I originally edited my image with these different layers, which I'm going to go over with you today. But I like to name all my layers. It's very helpful. That's why I made this wider, because it's not in the landscape mode, so I don't have a lot of real estate that I'll be losing. So I went ahead and just widened this panel out, so I could see all my notes over here, okay, on my layers. That's why it's like that. Just in case you're wondering, you're saying, Dave, what the heck are you doing here? Why is that so wide? Now we can get started. So let's come up to the Luminosity mask icon right here. Click on it. And I always like to start out with a Midtones 3. If you watch my TK Friday videos, you know I always do this. Midtones 3, I'll put it to a color grading tool. And this is for balance and contrast. And I normally write balance and contrast across here, but I'm not going to do it so we can save time. So I'm going to start out with my shadows. You can start out in any order you want. I'm just going to darken my shadows up just a little bit, maybe somewhere right around there. Then I'll go to midtones and darken my midtones slightly, not much. I want to warm the midtones up a little bit. See, I bring a little bit of warmth into that building there, which I think looks nice. And then I'm going to go to my highlights and just increase my highlights a little bit. And if you're using linear profiles, this really will pull some contrast into your image. Now, right now, that looks really nice. Here's the before and here's the after. A few little simple adjustments there, and it's good. And the reason I use this Mids 3 is just to protect, if I get really aggressive in these adjustments, I'm going to protect my shadows from clipping and my highlights. But that's step one. Now, after that first step, it really kind of gets me into the edit, gets my juices flowing. Then I start looking at the image and I say, what don't I like? What needs fixed? And I look at this tree down here, and I like this tree because it's kind of like we're in the city, but here's a tree amidst a bunch of skyscrapers and tall buildings here, okay? So I want to bring some lightness into this tree. It's not bad, but in the darker areas, I want to lighten it up. So to do that, I'll X out of this color grading tool and grab a curves adjustment and change its blend mode to screen to lighten it. And everything gets light, but I'm only interested in this tree here. So I'm going to put a black mask on here. Let me hide this properties panel. I'm going to drag this over too because it's getting in the way of my CX panel. And I'm going to put a black mask on here. So click this icon right here and that puts a black mask and it hides it. Now let's create a mask for this tree. So I think a color mask will work. So I'm going to click on this color mask icon and find some of these darker tones in here, maybe right about here, and click OK. And you can see you don't see much in this selection, but let me take this brightness adjustment and drag it the whole way to the right to lighten it up as much as I can. And let's see if we can tweak it a little bit. Let's come more into yellows. Now it's not doing a whole lot. Maybe, yeah, right about there. Let's try the greens here. Yeah, I can get a little more green by moving this to the right just a little bit like that. But now we can further refine it by clicking on this levels adjustment. I like levels. I'm going to drag this highlight slider to the left a good bit and really lighten that up. Something like that. And maybe pull the shadows in a little bit to tighten this a little bit. Right like that. And now what I want to do is output this to a black layer mask, painting through a selection with a white brush. So click this icon right here. And now we can simply, with a brush, and I'm going to paint at 100% opacity. I'm just going to paint on here and lighten this up. Now that may be too much, so I'm going to do a Command or Control Z. Let's go to like 40%. I was a little too aggressive there. It worked a little bit better than I thought it would. So I mean, that's exciting. Now I'm only painting. Now I messed up there a little bit. I'm going to hit Command Z. Actually, that's in the shadow. I don't want to get that one. I'm only interested in the lighter areas in here. Up in here. I'll get up in here a little bit. Over here. Down in here. Get in here a couple times. Every time I lift my brush, I'm adding more of that paint to lighten that area up. Now let's take a look. Here is the before and here is the after. See how it just lightens it up a bit? If it's too strong, you can take this opacity and pull it back. But I think it's pretty good. I'm going to leave it up at, well, how about like 93%? Here is the before and here is the after. So I like that. So that's the first step. And if you want to take a look at what that mask looks like, you can just click this double arrow icon. And you can see that's what my mask looks like. So I'm happy with that so far. Now remember, I'm looking for problems. The next thing I see, I feel the sky is just a little bit too light. It's not super light, but it's a little too light. So what I'm going to do is come and right now I have a selection here and I want to get a curves adjustment. So right now, if I click on the curves adjustment, it'll put this mask that I use for the tree into it. I don't want that. So click this icon right here and that gets rid of the mask itself. It gets rid of the selection. So now we can add a curves adjustment layer. I'm going to put it in the multiply blend mode, and that's going to darken the entire image. I'm going to hide that by clicking on this black mask. And now I'm going to select this sky. All we need to do is come to the CX panel or combo panel and click on this icon, and that'll select our sky. Just like that. I want to save the sky as a channel because I think I'm going to need it again. So click right here on the CX or combo panel and that'll open up the save selection. I'm going to call this sky and click OK. And now to apply it to this curves layer, all I need to do is click this plus minus button one time. That gets rid of the mask and click it again. And now you can see my sky selection inside that mask in the white area. Now it's too strong. I'm going to take this opacity. I like to take it the whole way off and then just build it up slowly and darken it to the amount that I like. And I think maybe around a 36. Here is the before and here's the after. So I just slightly darkened it just a little wee bit. Since I darkened the sky, I think my blue looks a little more saturated. So I'm just going to click on this icon right here. That'll put a hue saturation adjustment layer. I'm going to clip it to the layer below it by clicking on this paperclip icon and just take that saturation and just bring it down just a little bit. I think it's going to help a little bit. So here is the before and here's the after. So it just tames that blue down just a bit. The next thing I notice are these windows. Man, I would like to have a little bit more saturation in these windows here and lighten them up a little bit. So I think I can use a color mask to do that. But first, let me get a hue saturation adjustment layer. Click on this icon right here, and I'm just going to take the saturation and I'll increase it by moving this slider to the right. Now that's going to add saturation to the entire image, and I can always come back and readjust this. I'm going to make it a little bit on the strong side, like right around there. I'm going to hide this, and you notice this is a theme. I always like to add an adjustment, hide it, because I'm going to paint that adjustment on through a selection. And that's why I hide it, because I'm going to base my mask off the window right now. So I'm going to click on the color mask tool and click right here. I think that represents the windows pretty well, and click OK. And see, yeah, that's making a nice selection, right? So I'm going to take the brightness slider and really drag it up the whole way to the right and lighten up those windows. And you know what? I think these adjustments are pretty good. I'm liking the separation I'm getting here. So what I'm going to do is just take this, click on levels, and just lighten up the overall selection a good bit, like so, and maybe take the shadows in a little bit to make sure I'm not overstretching here, you know, just to tighten it up just a bit. And I call it tighten and lighten. Okay, so I think that's pretty good. And I'm going to output this to a black mask, painting with a white brush through a selection. And now I think I'll try 100%. I like my brush size here. Right now I'm at 40%. I'm going to type the 0 key. That's a shortcut. That's going to give me 100%. Yeah, and look, I'm just going to paint on all these areas, and I can go back and change things in the end. That's really a lot of saturation, but you notice how I'm only targeting the blue so I can paint right through this tree. Isn't that cool? To me, that is so exciting. Down in here, on these windows here. Okay, and here, like so. And then on these reflections over here. Isn't that cool? I can get these reflections as well, all in this area here. And just take your time, make sure you get all the areas. I'm doing a video, so I get a little bit quick here, and right on here as well. Oh, up in here too. I missed these. I didn't see those. Okay, that's pretty good. I like it. Okay, so it's really too strong. So now I could take the saturation and pull it back if I wanted to. And I think I'm going to go right there. Now, I want to lighten up these windows. And to do that's going to be easy. Now, right now, I still have that selection. You can see by my selection indicator. So let's click this icon on the CXR combo panel and get rid of our selection. I'm going to add a brightness contrast adjustment layer. It just gives me a brightness and a contrast adjustment, but I'm going to clip it to the layer beneath it, okay? So let's just come and click on this paperclip icon, and now it's only going to target the mask below it, and it's only going to lighten those areas. Isn't that cool? So I can just lighten everything up, and I think right around there looks pretty good. Now the blues may be oversaturated, so I can come back down to this layer, and I can either pull this opacity back or pull the saturation back. And I think I'll do the saturation. Just pull it back a little bit. I don't want to go too strong there, but I do want some color in there. So here's the overall before and the after. But isn't that cool? And even on these reflections, I love the reflections. There's a lot of glass in the buildings of Pittsburgh, which is really cool. This is all non-destructive. We can always go back later and readjust things if we need to. Now remember, I'm looking for problems, and I'm looking at this glass on this building here. I love the reflections over here, but I think this area up here is a little too light. I'd like to darken it up a little bit, add a little more contrast in here. So to do that, I want to click on the brightness contrast layer, because I'm going to put a curves adjustment above it and put it again. Another one of my favorites is the multiply blend mode. I use that a lot to darken things, okay, but I want to hide it with a black hide all mask. Now there's a lot of blue in here, so I think I can use a color mask. So let's click on the color mask icon, and let's click right here. That represents the blue, so let's click OK. And there's our adjustment. Let's go ahead and lighten that up a good bit. And I think that's going to be good right there. And let me go and get a levels adjustment. And I'm just going to take the shadow slider and drag it into the right a little bit, just to give me a little bit more separation. Something like that. And maybe lighten it up just a little bit right around there. Now I'm going to output this to a black mask, painting with a white brush through a selection. Let's try 100%. I'm at 100% opacity right now. And that's too strong, but I'll cut it back. Don't worry about that. I sounded like about that. Okay, it's fun to talk weird sometimes. Okay, and I'm just going to paint in this area right in here. Now remember, if I lift and start painting again, I can get some more paint down, and that'll darken that even more, but it's really dark there. So let's take this opacity and take it the whole way off. And now let's just build it up slowly. I just want to darken that up a little bit, just maybe right there. Let's see, here is a before and here's an after. So again, a before and an after, and I think that looks pretty good. Next, I'm seeing like this area, in the lighter area, in this orangish tone of the building. I'd like to lighten that up a little bit, so we'll do that next. I think I'll grab another curves adjustment in a screen blend mode, but right now I have a selection. I don't want that selection being added to the curve, so I'll deselect it by clicking right here in the CX or combo panel. Let's grab a curves adjustment. Let's put it in the screen blend mode. And now let's hide it with a black mask. Now let's create a mask. Now remember, I just want these lighter areas in here that represent this building over here, the Highmark building. I'm going to try a color mask. So let's come up and click the color mask icon. And I'm going to pick right here, that tone right there. See what kind of selection. Okay, we need to lighten it up and see what we got here. Let's lighten it up, and I'm going to take it the whole way to the right. Yeah, and that represents it pretty well. Let's go ahead and let's see if we can broaden this out a little bit. Yeah, that way a little bit. Let's try this. Not caring about over here because I'm going to paint this on. Let's get a levels adjustment, and let's just take this highlight slider, move it to the left a little bit, and lighten up that selection. Like right about like that. Let's output that to a black mask, painting with a white brush through a selection. I'm going to start out at, let's try 50%. And I just want to paint on these areas in here that reflect where that building's reflecting. 50%, I'm not lifting my brush. I'm just painting all that in, just like so. Okay. And then I have over here too. I might drop it down to about like 20%. Vary the opacity. Paint this in over here as well. I'm going to hit it another time. Another time down here, up here. And let me hit this one more time in here. And I think that's got it. Let's take a look. Here is the before, and here's the after. But see how nice that reflection's really starting to pop. Now, if that's too light, we can take the opacity. Let's take it the whole way off and just build it up slowly. And let's make it look natural. We don't want it to look overdone. But let's try that around 67%. Here is the before and here's the after. Before and after. And I like that. I think those reflections are popping nicely now. Here's some of that same reflection right here. So let me go to 50% and let me paint this as well. I kind of missed that. Yeah, so let me hit it one more time. Yeah, and let's take a look. Here is the before and here's the after. Now we can look at our mask by clicking this double arrow icon. That's what our mask looks like. I want to warm this up a bit here. So let's come up to the curves. Click on, see where it says RGB, click on blue. The opposite of blue is yellow. So if I pull down on this blue right here, see how we can induce a little bit of more warmth in there? So that's adding yellow. Now here is the before and here is the after. Yeah, I just think that blends the overall image a little better. The next problem I see is this building right here is competing with this building, so I just want to darken it up a little bit. Okay, I'm going to do this a little different. I'm going to come up and I think I can get a zone mask to get this. So let's click on the zone mask icon and let's click right in here. I think that represents that tone. Click OK. Now let's tighten up that selection by clicking and dragging the slider in. Maybe somewhere right about there. Let's lighten it up a good bit. I think like that. Let's get a lasso tool. Type L in your keyboard for a lasso tool. We're going to use mask to mask, so we're going to lasso around here. Just like this. Come up. Around here. Now we made that selection. Now let's click this mask the mask icon right here. And we don't want any feathering, so click cancel. You won't get feathering, but that's a real nice selection. Let's output that to a levels adjustment. And let's put that into a multiply blend mode and see how it's darkened that down. Now that's probably a little too dark, so let me pull back on the opacity the whole way. And let's just darken it to the amount we think. I just want to put the main emphasis on this building right here. That's 35%. I think I think right there looks pretty good. See, now we're looking more at the Highmark building. I'm just trying to draw our eye to the star of the show, which is this building right here. And I think that's good. I'm looking at this building on the left and comparing it to the building on the right. There seems to be more texture over here, but let's add some texture to this to kind of balance this out. So what I'll do is come to the TK actions. Let's grab a clarity action. It's really good for adding some texture. And I think I'm going to bump the radius up to about like around 20 or so, maybe. Let's try 30. Let's click OK. So that's looking pretty good. Here is the before and here's the after. Now there's texture everywhere right now. So I want to hide it. So let's put a black mask on here by clicking this black icon on the CX or combo panel. All right, and now we have to select this building here and just apply it there. But to do that, I think I can just freehand draw in here. I'm just going to grab a white brush, click right here in the CX or combo panel, get a white brush. Nice soft edge. Hardness is at 0%. And at 100% opacity, I'm going to type my 0 key. I'm just going to paint that adjustment on. No big deal here. Just come the whole way down and paint that on just like that. That nice soft edge is going to protect me on the edges. Okay, so let's take a look. Here is the before and here's the after. Again, the before and the after. But now I think it matches, this side matches this side. Next, I want to bring out the color on this Highmark sign, this blue area right here. So to do that, I'm going to grab a color grading tool. Now remember, to add it above this clarity layer, we have to click the plus to apply the color grading tool. I'm going to get the midtone block and just lighten up the midtones. I'm just looking at that blue. I'm going to call it a swoosh, okay? I'm going to give it a lot of blue. I'm not worrying about the rest of the image. I can come back here and readjust if I need to. Let's click on the highlight and let's lighten up the highlight a little bit. And let's throw a little bit of blue into that highlight like so. Now let's hide that by clicking on the black mask icon, and that hides that adjustment. And let's X out the color grading tool. Let's grab this color mask icon and click this blue in here and click OK. And that selects it really well. Let's lighten this up a good bit. Something like that. And let's output this black mask, white brush, painting through a selection. I'm going to make my brush smaller, and I'm just going to paint over this area here at 100% opacity and paint on that. Now I can hit it a second time, lift and paint again. And let's take a look. Here is the before and here's the after. I just think that helps. Next, I want to lighten up the Highmark letters. For the Highmark letters, what I'm going to do is grab a curves adjustment. Now I have a selection, so I got to get rid of it by clicking on the CX or combo panel here. And let's add a curves adjustment. Let's put it in the screen blend mode. They're white letters. Screen blend mode will lighten them up. Now that lightens everything up. So again, you know the drill. Black mask on there. Okay, and now what we want to do is build ourselves a mask. So let's come up to Luminosity mask this time. And that's lights 1. Let's try lights 2. I'm trying to isolate these Highmark letters. Let's try 3. Yeah, 3's doing a really good job. Let's refine it with a levels adjustment. Let me lighten this up a good bit like so. And let's pull the shadow slider in just to really isolate it and lighten it up even more. And I think right about there should do the trick, right there. Let's output this with a black mask, white brush, painting through a selection. At 100% opacity, we can simply paint that, and that lightens them right up. Isn't that cool? Just like that. Okay, so here is the before, and here's the after. And if we click the double icon arrow, there's our mask. That's what it looks like. So pretty cool. We're almost done. The next thing I want to do is soften up these clouds back here. I just think it'll look nice. And to do that, first let me deselect my selection by clicking right here. This is something that Tony Kuiper came up with. I told Tony I was using Adobe Camera Raw to use like a reverse texture adjustment. Tony came up with a way to do this right in the TK8 panel. So thanks, Tony, for this. And that was to get a clarity action. Okay, clarity action. And I'm going to take this clarity action up to a good bit, up to about like 100 pixels, right about there, and click OK. Now it's doing the opposite of what I want. So what I'll do is, invert this clarity layer. So come to the CX or combo panel and click right here. That'll invert the clarity. And now you'll notice when I do that, everything gets soft. Now we need to hide that. So click the black icon. If you recall at the start of this tutorial, I saved out the sky. So let's come up here to My Channels, click on Sky, and then simply click this icon. We'll apply it. And now check it out. Here is the before and here's after. But see how that nicely just softens the sky. We have all these textures in here with that softer sky. I just think, before and after, that looks much better. 2 more adjustments and we're done. We have all this nice blue saturation, so I think we need to bring up some of these warmer tones just to match it, to balance out the image. So to do that, what we're going to do is get a color mask, sample this color right here, click OK, and let's just fine tune this a bit. Let's lighten this up like this. We'll just really lighten it up. Maybe expand this over a little bit. Yeah, like there. Right about there. Let's try it this way. Does that help? No. Right there is good. Let's output this to a hue saturation adjustment layer. And now let's simply pull up the saturation. And it's only going to target those warm tones, okay? And it'll even get the reflections in the building, okay? But we don't want to go too strong, but maybe right around 34. Let's see. Here is the before and here is the after. But see how that just kind of brings up that saturation a little bit to balance, maybe a little more. Let me take it up to, let's try 38. Here's before and here is after. So before and after. I think that looks good. I think a vignette and we'll be done. So let's click on the TK actions. Let's click on a standard vignette. Let's just Gaussian blur. We'll accept the radius it gives us. Click OK. Let's go ahead and double click over here on the layer and let's protect our shadows. Hold your Option or Alt key down and split this shadow slider. And we'll take it up to about right here and click OK. Let's take a look. Here's the before and here's the after. The vignette really helps. It's a little too strong. Let's take it the whole way off and just build it up slowly. Yeah, I think maybe right around 30. Here's a before and here's an after, and that's the last step. Well, we started out looking like this, and now we look like this. Well, there it is, everyone. The TK8 plugin for Photoshop goes to Pittsburgh. Architectural photography, the TK8 plugin for Photoshop are a match made in heaven. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I really wanted to get really deep into this edit, and I hope you learned a lot. And you see how I work, where I'm looking for problems and I solve the problems and just take it one step at a time. If you enjoyed this tutorial today, please give it a like and share it with your friends. And if you're not yet a subscriber to my channel, please subscribe, click that bell notification icon. Then every time I upload a new tutorial, you'll be notified about it. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining me today in the Joy of Editing with Dave Kelly, and I'll see you all right here next time. But until then, happy editing.